I listened to Logan's podcast today and I listened to Sal tell a story about how he was selling fucking fake IDs on Silk Road with Bitcoin. And I was like, the regulators are probably going to come after us regardless. So I might as well say what I want to say.
I think it's worth it for the Deepin community to bring everyone that's extremely actively really building like authentic things in the space once a year in a single room and having fun and having drinks and playing ping pong and everything else together, in addition to hearing about some of the cutting edge things that people are working on.
I walked out to the main kind of venue floor and Mahesh's talk was kicked off. And it was just like kind of dark. He was up on the stage with the light shining on him, and the room was just packed. Like every seat was full, and everyone was kind of like looking up in rapture at this guy.
I listened to Logan's podcast today, and I listened to Sal tell a story about how he was selling fucking fake IDs on Silk Road with Bitcoin. And I was like, the regulators are probably going to come after us regardless. So I might as well say what I want to say.
Statute of limitations. It's all good.
I don't think that's how that works, man. I don't think that's how a statute of limitations works. I also think it's a lot more about the implication. But hey, fact is, that's probably more people in the space than less. And I mean, I needed fake IDs. So you did the world a service.
We were all teenagers once.
Got some new cameras, new microphones for the Proof of Coverage podcast. We've got DSLR cameras. We're using them as webcams. We need to get Mahesh one as well. But the audio and video quality should be much better. I'm curious, Sal, just like how was your setup process with the cameras and mics? And then I can talk about mine. But it was not as bad as I would have thought.
Did you write those instructions, or did Connor, or did Michael and the other Connor write them?
So I did. I autisted them. They were
long. That was crazy, dude. Like,
but
you have a future career as a fucking like IKEA manual like architect. That was so easy to follow. Yeah, it was extremely clear.
They were good.
Yeah, we got to do the reverse now though, to get all the pieces back in the box in the right way, so we can follow it again next time.
That's good. It wasn't like fun to learn the first time, so I was like, how do I make this as easy as possible? And I just like, calling out like what pieces go where and stuff. I'm probably not going to take the camera down fully and put it back in the box. Like, take the lens off, put the camera covers on the lens, take it off the tripod and move the tripod. But I'll probably like leave the cage on, leave as much as I can, because we're going to be doing this, once or twice a week. So
yeah, for sure. We were saying after we figure out how the New York ones went, we should do more in-person ones. Either like if one of us is in Miami for a day, we can like get all the Miami founders to come.
Yeah.
Or do the Singapore thing or something else.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I think that's like the superpower that we would have once we like know how to set these up quickly and take them down. Like, anything can be done in person wherever we're at. Yeah, I'm generally bullish on the summit stuff too. I just want to like see it and see what it looks like and like make sure it was good before we go book a bunch of Singapore stuff. But like, I think it'll make sense. Well, cool. Glad to hear it was not too difficult to set up. Also want to share with everyone, we're going to be trying out doubling the cadence of episodes. So we're going to record and put out 2 a week versus 1. And the way we're going to do that without spending too much extra time is to cut the episode length in half, because we realized recording in person at the summit that you can fit basically everything you need to in 30 minutes. You don't need an hour. So that's our plan, is going to have 2 episodes coming out every week. Other stuff we've done on the podcast, hired a new producer, Michael. He's fantastic. He came out from London to the summit as well, so helped us record in person for the first time. So yeah, I thought that was awesome. I was kind of like sequestered in this back room. It's a beautiful lounge, but got to have a lot of just like good one-on-one conversations with founders and investors, kind of like almost a kind of like exclusive version of their talks that they gave at the summit itself.
Yeah, I think doubling the cadence is going to be good. The feedback I consistently got, I just asked people around, like, what do you think of POC? Was, people love hearing Connor talk and can listen to him talk for 45 minutes. Nobody wants to listen to me and Sal talk for an hour. So I feel like cutting this size of these things in half and putting out more frequent episodes maybe just helps us get to the point a little bit faster.
Yeah, I think it's better for everyone. It's kind of better for us and the guests. And then for anyone that's listening, just like get to the point, basically. Cool. I mean, yeah, the other thing I wanted to cover is like the reason why we're doing this episode specifically is as kind of like a summit recap / Deepin outlook, is because our ETH Denver recap episode got the 5th most views out of like 35 that we've done. So clearly like that was valuable. People liked it. We want to try to do more of this format where it's just like, whether it's every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, kind of just catch up us three, talk about what's going on in Deepin, talk about, deals that are getting done, relevant industry events. Let's talk about the summit a bit, because I know it's on everyone's mind. From my perspective, it's like a huge success. So congrats to you guys. I think definitely felt very high signal, very high quality, everything from like the venue to the people that were there to the snacks and the swag, and everything was just like super well done. I want to talk about like what goes into planning something like that. I know Steen did most of it, but Sal, I know you were involved. Like, yeah, how big of an effort of a lift was it from you guys' end?
Yeah, I think it's something you'll hear from or that I heard before we started launching events from everyone that has made this into like scaled a sort of like events platform. It's just a shit ton of work. Like probably deletes 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of my year, basically planning and making it really high quality. I think it's worth it for the Deepin community to bring everyone that's extremely actively really building like authentic things in the space once a year in a single room and having fun and having drinks and playing ping pong and everything else together, in addition to hearing about some of the cutting edge things that people are working on. But in order to make it feel personal, I think there's no inauthentic way to do that. You really just have to have people who care, taking care of every single little detail. Hope people felt it in the way that Summit was put together and are excited about coming back next year.
No, I think y'all crushed it. And for what it's worth, I have the more distinct pleasure of just showing up to the event and bossing Steen around for 45 minutes till I drive her crazy. That's why, as I introduced myself in my first talk, I am chief pain in the ass. No, but Sal and Steen did such a high quality job and put so much thought into, making sure the guests were presenting, things that were different than maybe they had done before. They were presenting ideas that, were unique and thoughtful. And I mean, Sal was out there giving people comments on their talks. I don't think I've ever seen that happen before. So, we tried really hard to focus on the programming this year and make sure it was a curated set of sort of differentiated ideas that were actually helpful to people. I think, in particular, last year, we got the feedback that people liked the founder talks and people liked the investor talks, but would be cool to even just get a little bit more advice from people that were leading in the space and doing interesting things. So I think this year's particularly on the investor side, we had a panel on like how to raise your Series A. If you're a DePIN company, we had a panel on just at the underlying level, like how to create a DePIN framework that makes the most sense to investors, and explaining how the supply and demand side aggregate as quickly as possible and create this flywheel. And, feel like there were a lot of takeaways that people hopefully can tangibly use in their products that we're going to start seeing come to market in the next 3-4 months. So I felt like Deepin Summit was a huge success. It was great to see so many people out. And at the same time, kudos to Sal and Steen for all the work that they did on that, getting it together.
For sure. Yeah, let's talk highs and lows, and I can go first. Probably pretty predictable, but I would say the low for me was just like maybe an hour before the summit kicked off. We're in the podcast room, like nothing set up, none of the cameras or the gear. We had to like move a few chairs and tables. And so it was just like, the time is ticking down and people are going to arrive soon and you got to get this thing kicked off, but like nothing's set up yet. So just like a little stress there about like, how's this going to go? First time recording in person. Is the scheduling going to work out? All that stuff. But luckily everything went super well. Yeah. Like I said, we had our producer and his friend flying from London. So they set up all the gear, all the equipment. They're just complete pros at that. We're starting to learn the cameras ourselves, but it all went super well. And I mean, that kind of translates into the highs of, right before we started recording, I walked out to the main kind of venue floor just to look for some people, and Mahesh's talk was kicked off, and it was just like kind of dark. He was up on the stage with the lights shining on him, and the room was just packed. Like every seat was full, and everyone was kind of like looking up in rapture at this guy and seeing what he was saying. And like I could tell, like, Mahesh, you were feeling good, you were feeling confident, and yeah, just the amount of people that were in there, like the room really was full. I knew like things were going to go well. You know what I mean? Like the day was kind of off to a good start. So that was that, and just the recording in person going well were my highs.
It felt like our crowd. Honestly, I think for the first time I walked out and like Deepin actually felt like a real community where, it almost felt like a safe space where you could say what you actually thought, what you actually felt. And you knew that this group of people would support you. Sure, if you say stupid things, they'll give you shit for it. But it didn't feel like a hostile crowd, which, candidly, for the first 2 years of getting Deepin off the ground and just crypto out of this bear market. I can't tell you the number of conferences or talks or whatever that I've walked into where, it was either one person or five people because the one person brought his family and his mom. And then they deployed a helium miner for some reason and couldn't figure out how to get it set up. And we're just like pissed off at this concept. Like I've been to so many of those. So it was good to see the whole Deepin community of people that were optimistic about the future, optimistic about this technology, focused on actually solving the problems that we're aiming to solve versus kind of focusing on a lot of the noise that, candidly follows the crypto space around everywhere.
For sure. Sal, what about you?
Last year, all the highlights came, I think, like in the weeks after. I'm excited to post the talks. Mahesh and I mean, we had found out about like several companies that raised money, several companies that like made partnerships that announced in the coming weeks. So I feel like that stuff takes a little bit of time to work through, but I've already heard a bunch of those conversations happening in the background. Lowlights for me, so I was managing the deck for both stages and just like completely saved over my presentation like an hour and a half before Summit and had to start from scratch and remake it all. So I was just in the back room on my laptop grinding. Just
Is that why you didn't give your talk?
Yeah, because I lost all the slides like an hour and a half before. And so it literally just like the Goldman instincts kicked in where like it was just like straight keyboard shortcuts on PowerPoint for like 60 minutes and remade all the presentations for both stages and then got to rock and it all went well in the end. But yeah, that stuff always happens a little bit on game day. It worked out fine. Oh, and I'm going to call it Meltem because she sent me her slides like 90 minutes before her talk. A couple other people did too.
Thanks, Meltem.
But she won first place for sending it last. No, but it all went great. All the talks were incredible. I didn't get to catch the main stage ones while I was there, but have been watching all the reruns. I watched them last night and a couple more this morning. They're all fantastic.
Yeah, that would honestly be my low light too, which is that we're running around so much and spending so much time just talking to people and meeting people that like, I don't feel like I got to sit and soak in a lot of the messaging, I've sort of sat on the back end and watched all the talks. So very familiar with the content and think people did an awesome job. The energy was something special in the room. I think the level of excitement, optimism, and just a willingness to absorb, again, I said this before, is something that I haven't experienced at a crypto conference before, frankly, any conference. And it would have been nice to maybe bask and revel in that energy a little bit more. I think Sal probably feels the same way because, at least I was kind of running around mingling, talking to people. But every time like I went back to the back room to check in, he was just there hunched over his computer. Like I messed this thing up on the slide and I now need to redo this whole thing. So Sal, next year, hopefully we'll find you someone to manage that process for you so you can actually be a part of it.
Absolutely. We're going to have a whole team next year.
Yeah. Speaking of next year, what are you all thinking? Are you going to run it back? Do you want to do it bigger? Do you want to do it in a different way? Like what are your plans for next year, you think?
Deepin doesn't shrink, it only grows. Sal and I always joke that with the first one, we did it in a random hotel kind of out in the middle of California, an hour and a half away from SF. Just 90 to 100 people that showed up. This year, it feels like we almost 3 to 4x the crowd. Part of that was being in New York City. But I mean, the other side of it, very candidly, is like there's at least 80 people that like personally told me that they flew in for it, flew out the same day. I want to give a shout out to Sam Helene at CMT Digital, who literally flew in on the day of his baby shower just to watch the event and flew out that same night. Sam's a real goat. So, we're definitely going to run it back. Personally, I'd like to just keep getting bigger, keep getting more thoughtful with the content and programming, get the drinks out sooner this year than last year. We had this whole plan to do talks from 2 to 6, and we wanted to keep people a little bit sober just so, people would actually listen and pay attention. And it got to 4 p.m. and I had like the 35th person walk up to me and be like, where's the booze? So we did a little audible at the last minute and Steen worked some magic to figure out how to get us drinks a little bit earlier. But maybe next year, figure out how to turn it into as much of an event as a conference, i.e. one of the things that struck me that I think people loved about the summit this year was a big open space. There was a lot of outdoor space. It was 75 degrees outside. So it also just felt like a good time at the end of the day, all the conference stuff aside. And as I mentioned, I think this is a group and community that, spends a lot of time with each other on the internet. We all probably spend 12 hours a day on Twitter each, so we all know each other. But the opportunity to kind of see each other in person and just absorb everything that's going on, I think happens from time to time at side events, but very rarely happens at scale. So again, very excited about the amount of buy-in we got this year, hoping to get a similar amount of buy-in next year. And my goal would be to run it back even bigger, but I see Sal frowning a little bit over there because he knows I always go make these big promises, and then on the back end, especially for conference stuff, it's he and Steen that actually have to sit there and do some of the planning. So I'll shut up now, Sal.
I just don't know where we're going to find a venue in New York, or maybe it won't be New York, but it's going to be hard to find a venue in New York in 3X again in size.
Central Park takeover.
LeBain rooftop.
No, definitely not that. Definitely not LeBain rooftop. If we do LeBain rooftop, Sal's going to leave his wallet and his phone at the venue.
Iconic.
What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do it bigger and better. I think the whole like in-person podcast recording element is cool. Like I said, I want to see how the footage from the first one came out, but like at a first take, like I think it seemed very high quality, looked very good on camera. Like I think it's just a little bit more engaging for sure, having a conversation in person versus over kind of Zoom or camera. So yeah, I think, having different pieces of the conference, like the podcasting, like the ping pong, like just mixing things up, not having it be just like straight talks and straight happy hour was cool.
Who was the best ping pong player before we leave for the people that weren't there? I missed it entirely.
I didn't really see much ping pong playing.
I
Rowland said he was really good,
Okay.
which I believe.
Rollin was pretty good.
Scott said he was decent.
Yeah, I played 4 games. I won 3 of them. I got beaten by one of the 375 AI guys. They're really, really good at ping pong.
Nice.
Yeah, I like stormed off pretty angrily after. It was like 15 minutes before my talk, and I had to like go to the bathroom to settle myself. I'm a really bad loser, guys. Like you don't want to see me lose. I get nasty and I get angry, and it's not the mentality you want 15 minutes before giving a talk, but maybe that's a bit of why I was a bit fired up for it.
Just want to talk about DePIN as a sector a bit. So there's a whole list of topics we could cover, whether it's like crypto media paying attention, fastest growing subsectors within DePIN you guys are seeing. We could talk about aggregators and device financing and kind of these like ancillary services. We could talk about resurgence of DOI or like liquid versus ventures. So where do you guys want to go?
I'm going to throw a different one out there, which is that like I've heard a bunch of podcasts talk about SBC since I think most recently Chopping Block yesterday. And I was surprised because like they just kind of shot all over the conference. The feedback, not the deep, like the conference more broadly, the feedback that I heard most frequently was too much infrastructure, not enough applications. Someone made a comment that BAS, the Blockchain Application Summit, didn't have a lot of applications, which I thought was funny. I actually thought that was a really good event, and I walked in and it was full of life and energy. And I mean, there were a few application-based projects, but I mean, that just kind of speaks to the space of where we are in the cycle, right? So I think at the end of the day, I was a little bit surprised at how negative people were on SBC as a whole. I thought it, as a whole went pretty well and was excited to see so much energy. But the point that I wanted to make very quickly was that, one of the things that I love about DePIN that makes it so interesting to me is it's both infrastructure and an application. Like you look at things like Daylight Energy as an example, like they're building base infrastructure for the energy grid and to optimize the grid and to make you be able to do really interesting stuff with home applications. But like that's delivered through an application at the end of the day that you deal with, you interact with, that creates unique customer value. So, I mean, for a lot of the people, I think that we're complaining about the lack of applications. I'd push you next year to come to DePIN Summit, check it out, because I think one of the things that DePIN uniquely does, and this isn't true across all projects, but there are a lot of projects, again, another one I'll call out is Nosh, building food delivery, where like it is both an application and the infrastructure being built at the same time. And that made me a bit, especially compared to everything else, bullish on a lot of the stuff that we were seeing uniquely in there too. I also know I fully hijacked your list of 4 topics to talk about. I was just really surprised at how negative people seem to be on SBC as a whole.
It's because they're not DePIN pilled. They need to come to the DePIN Summit and talk to DePIN founders and have their eyes be opened to the amount of applications that are being built. Yeah,
I think one of the things that I enjoyed a lot coming out of the summit was there's a lot of people that have historically been massive DePIN skeptics, red pilled on crypto as a whole, but maybe not as interested in the infrastructure side, less interested in the idea of building internet businesses with strangers, that I think came out of the summit with a different viewpoint or some optimism around the ideas that they were seeing actually get to critical scale in the infrastructure that they were building. So I hope that, these sort of summits over time start to pull some of that skepticism aside. But I think, Deepin Summit continues to be a good sort of melting pot to bring all of those naysayers as well as the people that are extremely bullish on it together and have a real conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's what the summit is all about for sure. Just getting people together in person. It's also what making noise, publicly via media and whatever else is about, like this podcast, just us all being loud on Twitter. If we don't do it, there's not that many other people that would. So I think it's important that just everyone in Deepin, make as much noise as they can about what's going on here. And I think it's only going to grow, honestly, over the next few years. Feels like the very early stages, even though it's been a couple of years already.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe to even hit one of the points that you're mentioning earlier, it felt like Telecom and energy had a lot of energy at the conference. Like there was a lot of not just attention that was focused on it, but a lot of interest, I think, at a fundamental level about the problems that were being solved and the unit economics of how those problems might be solved through a DY approach, whether it's helium or Andrina, or an energy approach, whether it's daylight, sourceful, many others. And it felt like those two categories in particular seemed like they were, getting to the point of having real world traction at the level of like governments even paying attention, municipal governments, city-state governments. And that was something that I think I came away from Deepin Summit thinking, which was like those two industries in particular seem really well set up over the next year and a half to disintermediate incumbents and create very different offerings than exist today.
For sure. Sal, any last words from you?
No, just watch for the folks watching this. The Deepin Summit talks are they're actually all incredibly, they're incredible. Like all the speakers put in a ton of time into producing original content, and I think have really unique things to say, both on the investor side, useful advice for founders, and on the founder side, some companies that don't really have high profiles within Deepin, but that shared a little bit of what they're doing under the hood. So I think the Deepin enthusiasts will find it really interesting.
Alpha lives at the Deepin Summit for sure. Cool, guys. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for listening to the Proof of Coverage podcast. We'll be posting one new episode a week on Mondays, interviewing the best Deepin and crypto founders out there. If you like this episode, please follow us on Twitter or X at CoverageProved or on any major podcasting platform. Thank you.